Hey guys, so for this assignment, all I'm really wanting y'all to do is do a very simple or fairly simple little sprite animation. I'm going to introduce y'all how to do sprite-based animations as well as how to set up things inside of the animator, using the animator in order to control your animations. We'll do some more advanced versions of this next with the door assignment. But I just wanted to kind of show y'all some tips and tricks and how to get started using Unity animation with not only clips but sprites. So the very first thing is I'm going to give y'all this image here of Ken, and it's just a simple sprite sheet, compound sprite sheet, where you'll notice it has the transparent background and it has these different sprites of some of the Ken's animations. By default, it comes in as a default texture type. We're going to want to change that to a Sprite 2D UI. Okay, when we look at this down here, you'll see Sprite mode, packing, unit, mesh, size, all these different things that we can mess with. But the main thing I want to do is click on this button here for the Sprite editor. Hit apply, and that will open up this sheet here. Now the Sprite editor allows us to go to basically divide up an atlas like this into multiple sprites. So what I can do is go to Sprite editor. Actually, what I want to do is I want to trim it. So let's hit escape on that and go from sprite mode to either multiple or polygon. I'm going to go with multiple because we just want multiple sprites, not necessarily polygonal sprites. Squares will do just fine for what we're wanting. So click on Sprite Editor, hit apply, and you'll see that now the slice and trim are now active. So what I'm going to do is go to slice, and we're going to go to automatic. Pivot. For the moment, we'll leave it at set its center. We can change this later. Method, delete existing, and we're going to go ahead and slice. And so what now happens, if we click around, you'll see that everywhere that there's an image, it has now created a small trim box. It has created a small trim box around each one of these little cells. Okay. Each one has a pivot, and we can adjust these if we want to. Undo that, Control Z. Just let them alone where it's kind of already done it for us. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply, and then close this. And what we'll now have is you now have your single sprite now is made up of all these wonderful little cells of animation. Okay. So now what we're going to need to do is break down some of these series, okay, into animations or animation clips. So if we look, we have Ken 0 through what looks like Ken 9, okay, and this is all one like long idle animation for him. So I think we'll start there. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sprite here, and let's go back into 2D mode, and I'm just going to drag Ken into our viewport, and I'll do new animation. I'm going to call this idle. And so here's Ken, and you'll see that Ken 0 has now been dragged in here, and we have a sprite renderer, and as a matter of fact, it actually created an animator. If it didn't for you, and you just drag it in here like that, you'll see that you'll have a sprite renderer but won't have all the extra good stuff. If you don't have all the extras, you can manually add them by going to component, or by going to right clicking, go to create animator controller, or the other thing we can do is click on Ken, go to our animation tab, and click on create, which will allow us to create a new animation. But for the moment, I'm just going to start with Ken 0, and you'll see that it's already kind of created an animation for us, and I believe this animation goes through all of his animations. Yep. But as you can see here, what it has done is it has placed a keyframe of all these different little animations on here. Okay, this is the Ken 0 sprite. It's got keyframes, and we have all these different animations, each one being one frame. So real quick and easy, we can see that Ken 13, Ken 0 through 9 is what we want, right? And so once we hit 9, I'm just going to hit backspace, and I don't need the rest of these, so we'll just go ahead and select all that, hit backspace, and we should have, yep, 1 through 9. And if I hit play, you'll see in the little preview, we now have Ken, and he's doing his animation thing. Okay? Real quick, real easy. So, that's our animator, that's our sprite renderer. We have our animation just kind of playing in here. Alright? So, one thing to note about Ken, though, is you see how his feet keep pulling up off of the ground. So if we were to place him actually on the ground, you'd see that his legs are now still moving. That's not good. And the reason this is doing that is because the pivot point right now for him is set to be his center of mass. So it's moving everything along the extremities outward. What we really need to do is set the pivot point at least to the ground so his feet will stay stuck. Okay? The way we can do that is going back to the sprite editor. So I'm going to resume, go back to my project, make sure preview is turned on, go back to my project, click on Ken, go back to that sprite editor, and you'll see right here is where we have our pivot point. We change that pivot to bottom, or if we notice something about the way Ken's animations are all set up, it seems like his anchor foot is his back foot, okay, which is on the right side of this the sprite. So if we actually change the sprite to bottom right, I think we'll end up with much better animations. Okay. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to go to slice and change that to bottom right on all these, and then slice it. And that should have set the pivot point. You see how each corner, the bottom corner on all these is now bold. Okay, that means it's now, all these are now set to the bottom right, so they all have consistent pivot points. So I'm going to hit apply, close this, and you see that he kind of popped a moment. It's because his pivot point's now been changed. Okay, so now his pivot point of this sprite is now set basically off of his pinky toe. And now if we hit play, you'll see that he's now moving up and down the way his animation should be due to the way changing the pivot point. Okay, so now that we have him idling, let's see if we can make him go through some sort of an action. Alright, so what I want to do is, instead of idle, let's create a new clip, and let's call this one, let's say just Ken attack.anim. Alright, so now we're starting with a blank slate, and we're going to add a property, go to sprite renderer, and scroll down to where it says actually sprite, and we're going to add that. And so you'll see a little picture of Ken kind of pop up here, and if we look at the image we have of him, go to Ken, you'll see that he has his full front attack, his throw energy throw attack is these frames down here. So let's see if we can do this energy attack. So we'll go to the animation, click on him, and then we'll go, and we are on Ken 0, and if I click here, you'll see that we can go down through the list of sprites. So there we go. Let's back this up. So here's his moving, and then so it looks like this is about the first frame that gets set, and then he brings it back and throws. So we'll start with 21. As I just hit enter, and so now we have 21 set there. And now I'll hit the record button and kind of go to the next position. And we want Ken 21, next frame, 22, next frame, 23, and so on and so on. Too many. So let's go back. Is that 31? 31 does not look like the others. Yep. So 30 is the end of it. So go ahead and click on that. Click on this last key here and get rid of that. And now if we hit play, Now he's definitely throwing the attack. It's a little fast, though. I mean, if you look at this, he is blitzing through that so fast we don't even really see what's going on. Well, the cool thing about this is I've got this set at 60 samples. We can probably cut that down to 15. There we go. A little bit more realistic that way, kind of half speed. And if we really want to get in here, we can adjust things by grabbing it, and we have the slider here. And so I'm actually going to kind of grab this and space it out just a little bit. There we go. Get some good timing going on here. If we look at his idle as well, how fast is his idle going? Okay, his idle's at 12. We could speed that up to, say, 15. See what this looks like. A little better. 20 work. A little more energetic. Yeah, there we go. So, and then you could do the exact same thing here. So if you wanted to kind of scale it out a little bit, you could. And a little more of a hop to him. Okay, so now we have an idle and we have an attack. All right, so now if we end up hitting play in the game, what do we see? Well, we just see an idling Ken. So what we need to do is we need to set this up so that we can make kind of tell a story with it. And one of the ways we can do that is by using the animator controller. So the animator, this Ken 0 that we have assigned, if we open up our little video or little view here, is this guy. Okay, this is the animator. We have an enter state, an any state, an enter state, and an exit state. Okay, and what we're really going to be concerned with right now is we have these two here. If you don't have an idle and a Ken attack already added, we can always right click, create state empty, and add one in there. Or alternatively, if we go to our project, you'll see that you'll have an idle and a Ken attack animation, and you can drag them in there. But you should have both of these, considering that the controller was created off of the animation, which is all nested in here. By default, the first animation clip will be assigned from the entry, which is what gets played when you first start running the game. It'll transition straight into the idle. Okay, in this case, idle, if we go back to our animation, is set to loop. So it's going to loop. Ken's attack is also set to loop. We can turn that on or off if we want to. But we have this idle set up. So right now, he's just looping through idle. What we really want him to do is idle for a minute and then attack. We can later set this up so that he can attack due to a button press or whatever it is. And we'll kind of get into kind of how you can make triggers and actions happen through code in the next lesson. So what I'm going to do is go from idle to the Ken attack. I need to create a transition. So I'm going to right click, make transition, and click down on Ken attack. So if I click on this, you'll see that I'll have this little transition here, and you'll see that the animation will play in the little preview window, and we can see how it's all kind of working out. You'll see that it's actually going to loop through idle the better part of twice before it goes into the attack. Now, really quickly here, I want to show you something. This thing has this thing called exit time, and exit time basically says if you don't have any other conditions, such as a bool or a trigger or whatever, the animation is going to play a certain length of time, and then it's going to transition through to the next animation. Great for timing some stuff out. So in this case, I'm going to click on settings, and we see our exit time is 0.54. Okay, so this is going to basically say a little over half a second is our exit time. We also have a transition duration. And so what I'd like to do is we're going to change this. So instead of an exit time of 0.5, let's go 4. Okay, so like 4 seconds worth of idling, and then he's going to launch an attack. And so you can see along here, and then here's this transition. Now I don't want it to be this long, slow transition where it's blending the two animations together, which you'll find that it'll do that in 3D as well. I'm going to tighten this up a little bit so that we have the Ken attack and the idle really quick transition. So if we look at from the start here, hit play, bounce, bounce, all right. And so now that we have this set up, we'll have idle to Ken attack. And so let's adjust my main camera a minute, or at least we'll pull Ken over. How's that? Center him up, and we'll hit play. And what you'll see is that as the idle's playing and then it transitions, it'll transition to the next section. All right, so we can watch the state machine at work. Now, as you noticed, he went idle and now he's in an attack loop. Remember, that's a looping animation. So what we need to do is after he attacks, we need to bring it back to idle. So we're going to make a complete loop. So again, attack, make transition, going back to idle. And you'll see that this also has an exit time. Setting is 0.7 seconds. We have can attack actually twice with the idle. So you'll actually see he kind of throws his timing off a little bit. So what we need to do is kind of tighten this up so that he's not going to have much of a transition at all, right? We want to make sure that the can attack gets to play all the way through, or almost all the way through, and then it comes in to that idle. We'll just slide these up so it looks something much more like this. So now you'll see that he'll attack and then he hops back up. It's a little snappy, but I think that works all right. If we want to blend it a little more, we can kind of bring these two back together. And it's still going to create kind of the same look. So let's tighten that up. All right. Okay, so now we have it going, and then going the other direction as well. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. 1, 2, 3, attack. 1, 2, 3, attack. See how that's working? So now we have a complete looping animation. So go ahead, save your scenes, and kind of create your own small short animations. Remember, you can add as many of these as you want. So if I wanted to do an attack or do a jump or whatever else, I can make that animation just by adding another one, using another set of the sprites, adding them on here, and build more complicated hierarchies. Good luck.